Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking on an absolutely monumental task. Whether you're a lifelong football fanatic or someone who has literally never watched a full 90-minute match in your life, you've definitely heard the name Lionel Messi. I mean, we're talking about the most decorated player in the history of professional football, an 8-time Ballon d'Or winner and a World Cup champion. But today, we aren't just going to sit here and list off his trophies. We are going to completely demystify exactly why he's widely considered the greatest of all time, the GOAT. We're going to break down the sheer anatomy of his game, focusing heavily on his unique positioning and that absolute playmaking magic, and we're going to make it crystal clear even if you are an absolute beginner to the sport.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap to build our understanding step by step. 1. The atomic flea. 2. The art of dribbling. 3. The false nine revolution. 4. Evolving into a playmaker. And finally, 5. The complete attacker.
Chapter 1. The atomic flea.
Right, so before we even talk about how his mind sees the game, we really have to talk about his body. Standing at just 1.70 meters, or 5 feet 7 inches, Messi looks, well, tiny next to these towering modern defenders. It honestly can look a bit comical when he's standing shoulder to hip with a massive center back. In fact, as a kid back in Argentina, he actually required growth hormone therapy just to reach this height. But here's the thing about football. Being smaller isn't always a disadvantage. The physics of his body gave him something those taller defenders simply do not have, a literal, naturally lower center of gravity. And that low center of gravity, it is the absolute bedrock of his entire playstyle. It gives him this unbelievable agility and balance, allowing him to change directions way faster than the defenders who are just clumsily trying to stop him. But he's not just quick, he possesses some serious upper body strength. You know, in a sport where players often dive or fall over at the slightest contact just to win a foul, Messi is famous for staying on his feet. He absorbs the physical challenges of much larger opponents and then uses these incredibly short bursts of acceleration to just dart away. It's exactly why the Spanish media brilliantly dubbed him La Pulga Atómica, the atomic flea.
Let's move on and see how this builds in Chapter 2, The Art of Dribbling.
To see how that physical foundation actually translates to his feet, just listen to this quote from the legendary Diego Maradona, a man who a lot of people considered the absolute greatest before Messi came along. He said, "The ball stays glued to his foot. I've never seen anyone with Messi's ball control." When a football deity like Maradona speaks about your technical ability with that kind of reverence, you know for sure we are dealing with something completely otherworldly.
But how does he actually pull it off? Well, if we break down the mechanics, Messi is a heavily left-footed player. When he starts a dribbling run, which is often from the halfway line or out on the right side of the pitch, he pushes the ball using the outside of his left foot. This allows him to sprint at an incredible pace while keeping the ball perfectly shielded from defenders. Then, in a split second, he shifts to the inside of that exact same foot to curl a beautiful shot or thread an impossible pass. And honestly, here's the craziest part. His former manager, Pep Guardiola, famously observed that Messi actually runs faster with the ball than he does without it. No way, right? But it's true.
Chapter 3. The False Nine Revolution.
So, we've covered his magical feat. Now we are moving to his mind. The crucial point here is understanding this specific tactical term, the false nine. Now, if you're a beginner, a traditional number 9 is a striker who basically stays high up the pitch, right up against the opposing team's central defenders, just waiting for the ball so they can score. But a false nine? It's a trick. It's a player who starts in that striker position, but instead of staying there, they roam the center and actively drop deep, backward into the midfield. When they do this, imagine you're the defender. You are faced with a terrible choice. Do you follow the false nine and leave a massive empty space behind you for someone else to exploit? Or do you stay put and just let the false nine roam totally free in the midfield? Under manager Pep Guardiola at Barcelona, moving Messi into this false nine role literally changed football history. Positioned right in the center, Messi would drop deep. The defenders would panic and they'd follow him. And the very moment they did, Messi would use that incredible vision of his to orchestrate devastating attacks, linking up perfectly with legendary midfielders like Xavi and Andres Iniesta. By dropping back, you see, he wasn't just a goal scorer anymore. He became the ultimate creator, completely pulling the strings of the entire game.
Moving right along to Chapter 4, Evolving into a Playmaker.
Now, as athletes age, they inevitably lose a bit of their raw speed. It happens to everyone, and Messi is no exception. To understand his evolution as he got older, we really need to look at a concept native to Argentine football. It's called the enganche. It translates to the hook, and it describes a classic creative playmaker positioned directly behind the two main strikers, and their sole job is just creating chances.
Interestingly enough, this was actually Messi's favorite position as a kid, playing back in his hometown of Rosario. And as his career matured, he kind of organically morphed right back into this childhood role.
You can actually track this tactical journey chronologically. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. Back in 2004, under Frank Rijkaard, a really young Messi was pushed out to the right wing, which allowed him to cut inside onto that deadly left foot. Then, in 2009, Guardiola moves him to the center as that false nine we just talked about. Fast forward to 2014 under Luis Enrique, and he's adapted into this much deeper free playmaking role. And by 2017 under Ernesto Valverde, he had become a true deep dictator of the game. He'd occasionally even operate in a standard 4-4-2 formation where his main job was just dropping deep, linking up with the midfield, and constantly feeding his attacking partner, Luis Suarez.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between these two eras. Young Messi was all high energy, doing a ton of running off the ball, but honestly, he was also surprisingly injury-prone early on. Veteran Messi, though, he learned to adapt by covering less ground, dropping into those deeper areas to pass rather than always relying on endless, exhausting dribbling runs, and completely conserving his energy for short, devastating bursts of speed. He became ruthlessly efficient. This conservation, along with, a stricter diet and training regime, is exactly how he managed to avoid muscular injuries and extend his absolute dominance well into his late 30s.
Which brings us to our final chapter, Chapter 5, The Complete Attacker.
Now, what's really interesting here is this. To call Lionel Messi just a goal scorer, well, actually, scratch that. To call him just a goal scorer completely misses half the story. Look at this staggering number, over 410. That is the number of assists Messi has provided for club and country throughout his senior career. While he was out there setting world records for the most goals in a calendar year and the most goals for a single club, he was simultaneously becoming the greatest provider of goals for his teammates.
When you combine his over 910 senior career goals with those 410-plus assists, you arrive at this monumental figure, over 1,320 total goal contributions. To put that into perspective, that is the absolute highest total in the entire history of the sport. It proves definitively that his tactical evolution, from a right winger to a false nine to a deep visionary playmaker, allowed him to master literally every single facet of the attack.
From a small kid in Rosario needing growth hormone treatments, to the atomic flea weaving past helpless defenders, to the brilliant mastermind manipulating space across the pitch, Lionel Messi took his physical realities and turned them into an unmatched tactical advantage. He mastered the dual threat of scoring and creating in a way the sport had never, ever witnessed. Which leaves us with one final fascinating thought to ponder. As football continues to evolve, will we ever see a single player perfectly combine the roles of elite goal scorer and ultimate playmaker ever again? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the magic behind the game.